Hello, this is my blended learning exploration. So I'll admit I didn't come in with a whole lot of understanding of what blended learning is. So a lot of my current understanding comes from what I learned. So at first, I thought that it might be synonymous with using technology in the classroom. I quickly found that that is not the case because you're not using the technology to augment the learning. You're just kind of like translating it across technology or pen and paper. I found that blended learning often provides fast, even automatic feedback, and it's really student paced and personalized. So I was thinking of one of my colleagues does a like student tracker of like what people have a self tracker, what people have completed in a unit, and that I think would qualify as blended learning. I also saw that in the Khan article. It also allows simultaneous independence for the student, which is really big. We've talked a lot about in our group about how students are lacking that, and for teacher intervention. So teachers can help differentiate for students, and I saw that reflected in the FARA article as well. My experience is kind of contrary. I've found that a lot of my students prefer to sit and get, sitting in a lecture, and I also prefer that, even though I know it's not great. I'm really slow at feedback. Depending on the assignment, it might take me up to 2 to 3 weeks to get something back, especially because I coach. That doesn't help. And apathy. This is less with me, but with my students, I feel like they are less involved and they just don't want to pay attention. So, for my small lesson, I was thinking about those quizzes that I do with my AP Psych classes, and I was hoping to use blended learning to help students assess their quiz performance, to improve their reading and note taking skills by providing guided feedback and help them identify areas for restudy because they have to take the AP exam at the end of the year. So, what I have right now is built off of this article by Dunlosky et al., something I studied in college, and this idea of desirable difficulty, where basically our brains are really lazy and they're not going to remember something unless it's a little bit difficult. And so, giving quizzes at a frequent enough interval to notify the brain essentially that something is important and that they need to remember it. It's actually a really good way to learn information. So in AP Psych, we have weekly 5 point reading quizzes, both to encourage students to read, but also to provide that desirable difficulty. And again, it takes me a while to grade those. Even though they're quick, it still might take a week. And by then, we've moved on to kind of a different subject. So I was thinking as a blended version, I could use Google Forms to give automatic feedback and directed remediation. I'm thinking like maybe for each question, I could have a little like highlighted section of the textbook of where to find it. So maybe the issue is note taking, and that could help kids with that. I also was thinking I could use a spreadsheet to keep track of progress across quizzes and highlight areas of improvement. Like if kids are really bad at application questions or really bad at a certain unit, that would be helpful when they go to study for the AP. So it might look something like this, where they've got each quiz here and the score, but then it's broken down by question, whether or not they got each one right, what type of question it is, and I haven't really figured out how to yet, but like where to find it. Pebble is with me again, the dog. So sorry. In reflecting on the Koros question, what opportunities are you providing for informal learning, exploration, and play with new technologies in your school? I'm a little stumped. I think I do this, um, but kind of on more an experimental basis, not super frequently, unfortunately. I did really like in the course, chapter 9, when he said technology should personalize, not standardize. I felt like that really went with what we're talking about this week with blended learning. And I think in reflecting on my classroom, we often use technology and play through like applications. So like Google Maps, I think it's called My Maps, where kids can like annotate on a map, or we will play around with Pear Deck, right? Or We might play around with Edpuzzle. Each of those like apps, I feel like when I'm getting to learn them, I have the kids play with it and they kind of teach me, which I guess kind of falls into blended learning, right? Because it's also giving them independence. The academic article that I chose to look at fit pretty well with what I was trying to do. So the article was a combined analysis, and it was a meta-analysis. So it looked at a bunch of different articles of blended learning and formative quizzing. And so it looked at A, is blended learning pleasant for students and effective? And B, how can you use quizzes to support that? And I thought it was a funny title, The Promised Land of Blended Learning, Quizzes as a Moderator. So they found a moderate effect for blended versus traditional learning. So blended learning was a little bit more effective than traditional learning. And they found that kids actually enjoyed it as well. So that was positive. They also found that quizzes allow for greater success and buy-in to blended learning. So when kids are getting feedback through quizzes, they are going to be more diligent, I guess, with their learning and their completion of material. And they also, through the desirable difficulty principle, are helping them learn. And they even cited one of my favorite articles from undergrad called it was a Roediger and Karpicke article. Let me just switch to my references to see what it was. The Power of Testing Memory. So basically it looks at repeated practice. And as you practice something more and more often through quizzing, you actually get better at it. So yeah, that was a fun little connection. And here are my references. Thanks all.